Hey, welcome to Dad Space. It's Dave, your friendly host, Dave. How are you? I hope you're doing good. Welcome back to Dad Space. Today, I have a guest on with me. He was on my podcast, Living the Next Chapter. We talked about his book and his music. Oh yeah, music. And we wanted to share this episode here on Dad Space, just in case you haven't heard it. We're giving it to you here on Dad Space. So here you go. My guest today is Derek. And Derek's going to talk about his book. He's going to talk about bullying, a bunch of stuff today that really will hit home for a lot of us here on Dad Space. Here we go. So one of the things you're going to hear us talk about here on Dad Space is Derek's band. I love music, by the way. I've been playing music for a long time. Derek is one part of a band called Throne, and I'll put a link in the show notes to one of the songs I can't get enough of right now. It's called The Fatigue by Throne, which is one of his songs, and I listen to this song, I don't know, several times a week. It's great. So it's really up my lane as far as style of music and stuff, and I just love the chorus on it and everything. So anyways, in the show notes, I know this is not a music podcast, Dave, I know, but I really wanted to kind of highlight, we talk about a little bit in the podcast, but I'll put a link in the show notes. Go check out Throne, The Fatigue. Yeah, it's such a great song. Head over there and check it out. I think you're going to love it. So, and I'd like to get your feedback. Let me know. Hey, Dave, great song suggestion. Cool. Here you go. Here's the podcast with Derek as we talk about his book and again, bullying and a bunch of stuff here on Dad Space. Thanks for listening. Here we go. Okay, everyone, welcome to the podcast. I have an author with me today, and we're going to get into some interesting conversation around the writing process and about the great stuff he's up to. There's some really cool information that we'll be sharing within the podcast. I hope you can stick with us for the whole thing. And my guest today, Derek, is here with me. And Derek, so happy to have you on the podcast. Welcome. Nice to have you here.
I am happy to be here.
So, okay, Derek, where are you joining us from here in the world?
I am in Connecticut, United States.
Beautiful. Excellent.
New England, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. A lot of history there. That's great. Tell me a little bit, Derek, as we start off about your author journey in general. Like, where did all this start for you? Where one day you woke up and said, I'm just going to become an author. That's something I want to do. Like, how did this all happen?
Yeah, it's kind of a long story. You and I chatted a bit before, so you know I grew up actually playing in a band. Ever since I was a young teenager, 14 years old. I started a band with my brother and my cousin, and as soon as high school ended, we basically toured and put out albums, and that was just my whole life. So in a sense, writing is not really that new to me because I did a lot of songwriting. Obviously, writing a book is different, but it comes from a lot of the same creative space. You know what I mean? So I did the band for a good 10 years. You know, my mid-20s or so. It sort of fell apart to a degree. Our guitar player left, and my son was born right around that time. So time to shift gears a little bit. I got into the restaurant industry and management there, and a small restaurant owner took me under his wing basically and taught me everything I could ever want to know about the restaurant industry. And I had a really successful 13 or 14 years there, and all the while still doing music, you know. And I've always had my own studio, so my brother and I will always write and record still to this day. But
Nice.
Yeah, to bring it current, it was basically the huge catalyst that was COVID, as I'm sure it was for a lot of people. But it really hit the restaurant hard, and the restaurant wasn't able to fully recover to where it was before. So it's still there, and I'm still involved to a degree, but it's like a fraction of what it was. So that led me to really start looking for what my next step was going to be, you know.
And I went and found your music online on Spotify, and It's amazing. It's really good stuff. So I've been sharing it out with some friends and stuff as
Thank you.
well, and going, guys, gotta check out these guys. Are amazing stuff. So
Oh, cool.
let's talk about the band just quick because I like to nerd out on music. I'm a musician as well. A little
Sure.
history on the band. Can you share the band name as well with everybody?
Yeah, the band name is Throne, like a king's throne. So if anybody is actually interested in finding it, obviously that's a common word, but you can Google or search on YouTube. If you search Throne Band Connecticut, it should pop right up.
Beautiful.
And yeah, like I said, we
Yeah,
started when we were really young, and I believe our third show ever was in front of about 25,000 people. Because yeah,
And how old were you
we were the guitar player and I were 16, and my brother, the drummer, was about 14.
then? On your third show, you're out. In that wow. I talk about nerves,
Third show, yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely played every single night in my parents' basement for 2 years leading up to that. So
Yes.
we
Yes.
we knew what we were doing. However, nothing can really prepare you for that size of a crowd. And
No.
yeah, the local radio station, the local radio station latched onto one of our songs, and it just got really popular. And then they had in the time, the late '90s, early 2000s, they had an annual festival show. And they would just have all these huge bands come. There'd be about 4 different stages. It was really cool. And they invited us to be on, and we were just like, at that time we'd play our first show, which was at our high school, and then our second show, which was at some random little gazebo outside, and then that. So it kind of took off
straight to the top. Yeah. I love it. So I love that you said the music's still part of your life. That's great. So
Yeah,
it's just, it can itch you can't scratch anywhere else is through music. So it's good.
correct. Yep.
So okay, so let's jump into the author side of this. Is there somebody that inspires you, or is there someone that came around you and said, you really need to share your story, you need to share your writings with the world? Who kind of gave you that little push to do all this?
It didn't really come from the outside. It kind of came from internally, because I was going through a moment when reality was sort of sinking in with me, and I was like, I need some sort of a career path now that the restaurant is not going to be what I thought it was going to be. And I would just go to sleep every night and just ask for a sign, or ask for some sort of direction. And eventually, after a few days of that, I would get up in the morning and I would just start writing. It would this stuff would just start flowing from me, and it was more like, self-help kind of higher power spirituality kind of writing. And I was just filling up pages and pages and pages, and I started keeping a notebook by my bed, because I would wake up in the middle of the night and just start writing, like all these ideas would come rushing in. So I took that as a sign to a degree. I was like, all right, well, I'm supposed to write a book, or I'm supposed to write something. I don't know how it's going to be lucrative, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I followed that basically. And then as soon as I internally accepted that and that I was going to pursue, the pieces started kind of falling into place, and I would find sign pointers online, and people would be brought to me, and I'd just start learning little bit by bit by bit by bit, next step. And because it's extremely nuanced, self-publishing, and writing and being an author. There's so much.
So based on what you know now as an author, what would you have liked to have told yourself back when you were starting to write? What kind of suggestions would you have if you had a chance to kind of go back there? Because I'm anticipating people listening to this are where you started, and I know things might be different now, but just the motivation to write. You don't have any words of wisdom for people listening to that?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the desire is there, and you have something that is worthy of getting out there, it's really just about following the path. And that's what it was for me. Is I did kind of enroll in a couple little courses, and I kind of picked pieces of those put them together into what worked for me. And then, I eventually established a presence on Amazon and KDP, and started building up my author profiles throughout social media, and just kind of, it's not the type of thing that, it's not get rich quick, and it's not overnight success by any means. So it's more of it's an investment in time and in will and in heart. But you can definitely be successful at it if those things fall into line.
So let's talk a little bit more now about the book. Can you share with us the title of the book and kind of take us behind a little bit of why you wrote this?
Yeah, so my first book is called Building Unstoppable Self-Confidence for Teens. So at the moment I am writing to that niche, to the teenage or even preteen niche, which I kind of fell into, which the niche basically found me, which is really cool. Because like I said, I was writing, when I first started writing, it was very broad. I guess I'll say self-help, but higher thinking kind of stuff like that. And I quickly realized that would be very, very hard to break into as a new author, because it's flooded with authority figures. And eventually I realized that, I had a lot to say, and a lot of ways that I knew I could help people, but maybe the way to do that would be to bring it to a younger crowd before they actually hit adulthood, and they're so, wrapped up in their own patterns. So yeah, I kind of fell into the niche there, where it was like, okay, I can break this stuff down. I'm good at breaking this stuff down and delivering it in a simpler way, and maybe that's great for young people.
Would parents benefit from this book as well, as a broader audience, like specifically dads?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the really cool part that I've been finding, is that it's kind of like a dual niche, because the book is written for teenagers to read. However, I mean, as a writer, you put together early readers before the book is out, in hopes that they'll, support you and give you a review and kind of get it ready to be launched. And what I was finding is that I wasn't actually marketing the book towards teenagers. It was their parents, and still is their parents, that kind of get the book first, and then they'll read it, and then most of the time in my case, which I'm grateful for, is that they'll like it, and they'll pass it along to their kids. So yeah, fathers and mothers are my audience in a way, which is cool. And then it trickles down through the kids, and that's who it's supposed to get to. But I found that it's actually, parents are loving the book too. And there's a lot of sections and chapters in the book that can really be read by adults, and I think learn something.
How's the response been so far to the book? Your audience responding back to you, giving you some feedback? What are they loving about the book so far?
It's honestly it's blown me away. It's been very successful. The book came out at the beginning of December, so it's only been 2 months, and it's been awesome. I have a lot of people as a part of my mailing list and my Facebook group and author page that are really into it. And I kind of thought at first that maybe December was, it's the holiday month, and I was getting lucky, and I was grateful for that. But then January almost doubled the book sales of December. So I was like, wow, I must be doing something right. You know what I mean? The thing I like about the book, and I think that a lot of other people, the parents, really appreciate as well, is that I do incorporate my own story. So I kind of weave my story in and out. So it is a nonfiction setup in the way that it's giving you chapters on how to build esteem and confidence, how to find your passions in life, how to learn how to think, even down to how to love your body and how to deal with bullies, how to set up boundaries and choose good influencers and that sort of thing. But like I said, I weave my own story in and out of that, which is kind of cool. So it's a little more personal in that way.
We kind of glazed over grade 7 and 8 a little bit when we were opening there. I don't know how this would be like grade 9, but is there something about your story that really is the impetus, the spark for all of this, that your message you just really want to share and help people? Because, like, I can think back in my earlier days, and there are things that you talked about bullying. I've been bullied as a kid, and as soon as you say that, a little trigger goes off, and I'm like, oh, I'm interested. I want to know what this is about. So is there something in your story that's you feel is something you bring that's unique that you can help people with?
Yeah, it's definitely, the bullying thing for me was really, really rough during a couple of years, specifically 7th and 8th grade. So that's stuck with me my whole life. I can't, bullying is a very sore subject for me. So when I was
Yeah.
my brother and I was about 10 years old, and my parents moved school systems. They moved out of the, basically more of the city into more of a country area. So starting at middle school, it was a new school, new grade, 7th grade. I was a completely new student there, and it was rough. I was coming from, I think I was basically listening to kind of like R&B and rap at the time, and, like pop music and that sort of thing. And I came into this school where it was just total culture shock for me. Like, kids are listening to Pink Floyd and Zeppelin and Allman Brothers and all that stuff, and I didn't know anything about this. I looked totally different. I stood out like a sore thumb, and it was like, just, for me anyways, it was like just joining a new planet. It was just like, here I am, and it was rough. It was the bullying was bad, and it didn't go away anytime soon. It was pretty much 2-3 years of that. So that kind of gives me the heart to be able to write on this topic. And then now, I have 3 children now, and my oldest is just turned 14. So they're 10, 12, and 14. So they were also a big inspiration in getting this story out. And in a way, I kind of wrote it towards them too.
Because these years and those experiences are just as real today as they were when you were back on that first day in that first new class, right? And then to look at your kids now and go, wow, that's the same age that I was when I struggled, and it's still impacting me as an adult. So the fact that you're writing something that helps students today so that they're not having the same memories that you and I have as we look back, right, later on as adults. I think that's interesting that you have gone down this path to help kids today. That, like, are you hoping that this book opens doors for you to, like, speak at school or help kids more in person? Is this kind of where you're headed with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's already been opening doors. I don't know that I'm the best public speaker, or that's what I really want to do. But I mean, for instance, I've done a ton of podcasts already and interviews, and actually putting a local nonprofit is putting something together in the next couple months for mental health awareness and suicide prevention for young people. So I'm going to do a book signing there. So yeah, it is opening a lot of doors. And just to go touch back on what you were saying too about this generation is, my children's mother and I are actually divorced. I'm remarried. So, and she's remarried, which everything's great and copacetic, thank God. But they just moved. So my kids just switched school systems as well. And that was right around the same time that I started writing this. And I was just like, so yeah, that tugged on my heartstrings too. And I was like, I want to get this message out there. Ironically, my kids haven't even read the book yet, so I'm still trying to get them to do that, but they will.
And I guess the other thing that students today deal with that maybe our generation might not have to have done is just being online 24/7. And, like, we could go home and the bullying, in a sense, could stop physically because we're not there in the same room. But now students bring it home with them on their phones or whatever. They can't escape any form of bullying or any of that stuff. It's with them in their pocket all the time.
Yep.
So having a book like this is great to kind of help reinforce people's identity and who they are and help them to find themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that's hugely important right now. So I'm happy that you have written this. Are you seeing impacts on social media and stuff on your own kids right now, or the kids that you talk to?
As far as bullying goes,
Yeah.
luckily, yeah, I mean, a little bit. Luckily, it's not nearly to the degree of what I dealt with, from what I can tell anyways, and from talking to them. But yeah, there's some bullying, and there's issues going on. And like you said, there's a lot more challenges these days than there was, 20 years ago or 25 years ago. One thing I did notice when writing and researching the book is that, surprisingly, the needs of teenagers and the issues that they face and the struggles kind of are always the same at the root, though, regardless of what century it is or what technology is doing. Or there's different types of challenges and different degrees of challenges, but ultimately teenagers, I guess, have always dealt with this, with basically finding themselves in a sea of people and fitting in and bullying and all that. That's always remained, which is really odd. It's kind of like a rite of passage almost. But there is ways to navigate it and to get through it a lot easier and to learn how and why things are happening the way they are. So it's kind of my goal to help them out in that way, to learn from my mistakes and make a positive impact that way.
So when your kids read this book, especially your oldest, is there any hope that you have in the back of your mind that this book will help you with this portion of your story? Is there, do you have a hope for that? And I like to kind of unpack that a little bit.
I do. I don't necessarily rely on it for that. Like, it's not like, okay, I wrote this book and my kids are going to read it and they're going to blah, blah, blah. And, it's, everyone's on their own path, even very young people are, and they'll read it when it's time. And a lot of the reason I wrote it was for them, but a lot of it was for me too. So, and for other children, not just my own children, I've seen a lot of impact already. I mean, it's still so new, this book, but a lot of impact already, just hearing from what other parents are telling me, basically, which the book is already helping, which is really cool.
I'm interested too, like you mentioned about your community aspect around the book, where people are in contact with you, and you talk about Facebook and your author page. Can you talk a little bit about just building community around a message like your book, and maybe why that's important for an author to build community?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the whole reason of putting a book out there is to affect and touch other people, right? So it's not you're not writing a book in a vacuum and just locking it away in your closet. So yeah, I think that would be the natural extension. I can't say that I sought it out too much. What I did a lot of is, and I still do, is joining Facebook groups of, like-minded parents. And that's how I did a lot of my research for the book too. But that's how a lot of these things came along for me, such as interviews and signings and everything, is just reaching out that way and actually being interested and wanting to learn, wanting to help, but also wanting to learn, you know what I mean? Just kind of growing that where you can. And thankfully that is easier these days, finding Facebook groups and finding like-minded people. And yeah, I would have to say that Facebook groups were a huge part of that for me.
Do you think your book helps to open doors of communication between kids and their parents, as far as maybe if I am struggling with body image issues or bullying, that kind of thing? Is this, having this book in the home, do you think it might open the door then for parents to have good conversations with their kids?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would hope so. And that's kind of the cool part about the parents reading the book first, which I didn't plan on that, like I said, but it's almost like if they're reading the same thing, they can talk about the same thing, and then they can go over the exercises the same way. A lot of books in this genre, in this young adult niche, are like, if you look them up on Amazon or wherever, you'll see there's a lot of workbooks and kind of journaling things. And, I kind of didn't want to make this book so much that way, like another workbook, because just thinking back to when I was a kid, the last thing I wanted after a day of school is to do more work. I didn't like homework. I didn't see the point in it. And then to have your parents give you another workbook on top of that is just like, it's going to be hard for a kid to get motivated to be like, yeah, I'm gonna improve myself now. No, they want to play games and sports and be with their friends. So I kind of wrote this book as really a personal, like, from me to them kind of thing. Like, listen, the premise is basically there are going to be points in the book where you can do some of the internal work and you can do some writing, but ultimately you're going to get out of it what you want to put into it. If anything, I just want to tell you my story. I want to tell you what I learned and what I went through, and then hopefully that can help you. So beyond that, any work that you put in on your own, you're gonna get back exponentially. Yeah. That's kind of how it's delivered.
And so this is not the only book. We talked about this before we had record. You got something new coming up as well. Is this going to be a companion to what you've written, or something completely different?
It could definitely be a companion. Yeah, it's really cool. I don't want to give too much away about it right now. I don't even have the title 100%, but it is geared towards teens again, and it's a different format completely. So
okay,
but yeah, I would think the two together will be great together.
Combination. Nice. So that's great. That's coming in the future. And yeah, again, I don't want to spoil anything, but I just love the fact that it seems like once an author writes their first book, the second one is usually pretty well close to the first one as far as idea stage, or, there's something brewing in the background. Again, that's kind of why we picked the name Living the Next Chapter as our podcast, is that you are always living that next chapter. And even though you write one book, doesn't mean you never think about it, reference it, or want to go deeper, or maybe in a new direction. So I love hearing that there's something else in the works too that speaks to you as an author. I like that. So
yeah, and another part of that too is, you spend so much time on your first book building up that audience and building their attention. You know what I mean? And it'd almost be a shame to alienate those people on your next book and just release something completely left field. I mean, from the writer's end, you're going to have to basically start from scratch. You're going to have to build a new group, and a new niche is not easy to develop. But then from the reader's standpoint, if they really do love what you're doing, and these are parents and kids looking for this information, you kind of alienate them by not sticking at least in the same vein. I think it's very smart to do that for at least the first few books.
So Derek, there's people that have come to this episode maybe because of the title, topic, but I have listeners that are across the board as far as age-wise. So I have listeners who are in grade 6, 7, and 8 who are listening to this podcast, and I'm thrilled with that. I would love for you to talk to them directly as your target audience of people that would read your book, and just kind of get your message to them today about how they can survive and how they can thrive with all of the pressures that they're facing right now, and how your book helps them. Do you mind kind of going down that path a little bit?
No, not at all. I actually think that's really cool that you do have listeners from, younger spectrum too, because it's very hard to talk to them directly, being an adult. And that's why I said, a lot of the times I'm talking to your parents, and I'm trying to reach you guys, but I'm going through your parents first, which is still great. But yeah, I guess if there's anything I want to say is that, like I mentioned earlier, it's not really a workbook. It's a book that hopefully you can read on your own time and enjoy. and reading in general is great. But it can be read with no expectations, and really just to open your mind up a little bit. Because when you're not just when you're young, at any age, as a human being, we have so much more power than we even know, than we're even aware of, and it's all really inside of us. It sounds a little cliche, but the reason it sounds cliche is because it's true, you know. So the subtitle of my book, the end of the subtitle, is creating your best life from the inside out. So that's what this book is going to do from the start. It's going to work on the inside. How to find yourself. Who really are you? You know, am I watching my thoughts? Am I aware of the power of my thoughts? Do I know any sort of direction in where I personally want to go, not where others are telling me I want to go? And then as the book goes along, it's gonna show you how this sort of stuff starts turning from the inside and affecting the outside. So it's really, I hope, a transformative kind of book in that way. But yeah, it's if anything, even if I were to break it down to one sentence on why you should read this book, it's just because you have so much more power than you even know, and might not even know. Some people live their whole lives without knowing, but if you can even start to tap into that when you are young, then you're so far ahead. And for you, not for other people, not for your parents, not for, you know, authorities, for you.
It's awesome.
So that would be my message to.
I love it, Derek. People. That's imagine how your life would be different when you were in grade 7 and you heard an adult who had a book like yours come to your classroom, come to your school, had a podcast, I don't know, but you were able to hear this message back in grade 7, how this might have helped you. And the fact that your message today now can help this generation, right? That's a big thing. That's huge.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. Yeah. I think about that. And when I was writing the book, that's kind of what I thought about too. I was like, I want to write something that I wish I had when I switched schools in 7th grade. And I was, you know, I didn't like myself at all because other people didn't like me. And I looking back, I realized that I was going about everything completely backwards. And I don't live with any regrets, you know. I don't regret that time, because if it weren't for that time, I wouldn't be here right now or even talking about this right now. So it was good for me. But and I do believe that kids need to go through certain experiences in order to grow. That's part of what's in the book too. You know, it's how do you view them? How do you view these circumstances, this contrast in your life? But at the same time, if they can kind of stand on my shoulders a little bit, you know, and get that little extra perspective or extra little leap or boost of self-confidence, then that could mean the world to somebody.
Like stepping on stage with 25,000 people, though. You know, that'll boost you up there a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's the third step in the book, is you got to play in front of 25,000 people. So.
I love it. It's amazing. So there's lots of things that we can send people to. Again, I'm listening to you guys on Spotify, and I'm loving it. I got you in my playlist, so that's really cool. It's great to connect with you on a musical level. So thank you for putting that out in the world. And you have a fanboy over here, so I'm enjoying it. So thanks for that. But we'll have links to all of the information. And then in the future, when book number 2 comes out down the road, you know, when that happens, we'll update our links with that as well. But what is your message as we close off, Derek? How do we inspire parents to be more aware of their kids when they go inward? Maybe they're being bullied or they're feeling pressure and they don't know how to explain how they're feeling. So they retreat to their room and shut the door, and there's silence in the house. How, as parents, how can we go in and encourage our kids to talk to us? How do we become an ally for our kids as they struggle through some of the hardships they go through at school every day.
Yeah, parenting's not easy. I'm not going to lie. There's no magic pill, unfortunately. What I find in my own experience and just talking to others is it's really just a balancing act between being there for them and being their friend and having them open up, but also not pushing too hard because young people are supposed to find their own way to a degree. And sometimes that hurts. Sometimes it hurts coming to the realization that in this moment, there's nothing really I can do except allow them to be themselves. So it's kind of just a nuanced finding that balance. But you have to always be open to being there. You have to understand as a parent that your child is not you, and they are their own person, and you might not always know or be able to help, but just always be open to that. Be that open door that they can come to when they need it, and just kind of learn your own child and when to push a little more and when not to.
Love it. It's great. Derek, how do we connect with you? What do we do? How do we find you online?
Okay, so everything is pretty much Derek T. Freeman author. And I mainly use Facebook. So, facebook.com/Derek T. Freeman author. Same thing on TikTok, same thing on Instagram. Those are really the three main tools I use as far as social media goes.
Awesome. So they can find you there, and that's great.
I will also say, I just want to throw out there, if you do read the book or want to support the book, the biggest thing that a consumer can do to help get the message out is to leave a positive review, whether it be on Amazon or mainly Amazon is the biggest one, Goodreads, anywhere. And anywhere you get the book, any sort of review that's how people judge things, and that's how people buy things these days. So not just for me, but in order to get the book well known and to get it out to the people, to the hands that may need it, the best thing that you could do, and it only takes a minute, it's not hard, it doesn't cost any money, is just leave an honest review.
It's a great request, and I'm encouraging everyone to do that as well. And this would make a great gift as well. So a grandparent that's listening and you want to give something to your grandkids, and they're in this age group, put this in front of them, let them see it, let them have it. It's a resource that's going to help them. And that's why I love having you on, Derek, is, again, I relate so much to your story, and this is something that just needs to be talked about and put out into the world as regular conversation that we can have, so people don't feel alone or students don't struggle in silence, not knowing who to talk to. The fact that you're doing this is great. I really enjoy it.
I agree.
Excellent. And if you need some good music in your life, I'll put links to that as well in the show notes, because this gentleman will definitely entertain you. I love the music. That's another whole podcast, but yeah. Derek, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. I really appreciate you making time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Dad Space today. Go check us out on all of our social media, YouTube, all that great stuff. You can find us as Dad Space Podcast. Real simple. Dad Space Podcast, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube. Email us, dadspacepodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for great guests to come on the podcast. If you have any feedback for us, let us know here at Dad Space. Looking forward to connecting with you on the next episode, right here of Dad Space. Follow us on your podcast app for more. Cheers. To you, Dad. Thank you.